Welcome back to ASTR, the video magazine that brings together the Seventh-day Adventist Church's past and present in order to inspire for the future. First in this episode, Ashley Chisholm, our Record Center manager, tells us about This Week in Adventist History. Next, the managing editor of the online Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, Dragoslava Santrac, joins me to tell another inspiring story from the encyclopedia. Then Galina Stelle, our research and evaluation manager, shares recent research findings about fellowship among Adventist church members worldwide. And finally, to end this episode, Maggie Naira, editor of the Seventh-day Adventist Yearbook, shares information about the yearbook website.
Welcome to This Week in Adventist History. This week, we take a look at the early history of the Battle Creek Sanitarium. On September 5th, 1866, the Western Health Reform Institute officially opened its doors. As an institution, it had a twofold object: to treat disease on what were called hygienic principles, and to instruct people on the theory and application related to, quote, the important subject of so caring for both body and mind. They plan to use only those means employed as nature can best use in her recuperative work, such as water, air, light, heat, food, sleep, rest, recreation, etc. Those might sound familiar to Adventists 150 years later in 2023. Its first managing physician was the 38-year-old Horatio S. Lay. Dr. Lay had been born in the U.S. state of New York in 1828. He studied medicine at Western Reserve College, today's Case Western Reserve University, and moved to Michigan to practice medicine there. He married his wife Julia in 1852, and they became Adventists in 1856. Julia's ill health led them to travel in 1862 to Dr. James C. Jackson's Our Home on the Hillside in Dansville, New York, where Julia became a patient and Horatio worked as a physician, learning what he could. After 3 years in New York, the Lays returned to Michigan, and Dr. Lay took up his private practice until called to lead the institute. Dr. Lay was joined by two other doctors, 34-year-old John F. Byington and 42-year-old Phoebe M. Lampson. Dr. Byington had become a Sabbath-keeping Adventist in 1851, a little bit before his parents, John and Catherine Byington, had also become Sabbath keepers. Yes, Dr. Byington's father was John Byington, the Seventh-day Adventist Church's first General Conference president. Lampson had been born in 1824 to Jonathan and Maria Lampson in the U.S. state of New York. She studied at Clarkson Academy, and in 1855, she had decided to study medicine. Soon, Doctors Lay, Byington, and Lampson were joined by 25-year-old Kate Lindsay, who was determined to work at the Institute. Lindsay was sent to New York to train with Russell Trowell, the advocate of hydrotherapy that all three had previously worked with. She also took courses at Bellevue Medical College and returned to the Institute in late 1869. The Institute encountered financial difficulties and struggled to stay open. In 1870, Dr. Lay left the Western Health Reform Institute and restarted his private practice of medicine in Allegan County, Michigan. Cognizant that a trained medical doctor was needed, in addition to the hydropathic physicians at the Institute, and encouraged by church leaders to study medicine, Lindsay became one of the first 17 women admitted to the University of Michigan's medical school and began working her way through to her degree. In 1872, Dr. Byington tragically died at the age of 40, leaving the Institute in dire straits. In 1875, 25-year-old John H. Kellogg joined the staff of the Western Health Reform Institute. Kellogg had been sponsored in 1873 by church leaders to be trained at the University of Michigan and then at Bellevue Medical College, and he graduated in the spring of 1875. He was joined later that year by Dr. Lindsay, who had graduated that fall, having paid her own way. Kellogg became the medical superintendent and head of surgery, and Dr. Lindsay became the head of obstetrics, women's health, and pediatrics. At that time, both were determined to keep the institution in line with its original principles and with advances in medical knowledge. By June 1877, the Western Health Reform Institute had been renamed as the Battle Creek Medical and Surgical Sanitarium, though most people called it the Battle Creek Sanitarium, or even more simply, the SAN. The rest, they say, is history, ending with the purchase of the SAN's main building in 1942 by the United States government. This all comes from This Week in Adventist History.
Today's story from the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists, which is freely available at encyclopedia.adventist.org, is about Clinton Achenbach, an American missionary who served during the early phases of Adventist work in the Spanish-speaking countries of Peru, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic.
Clinton, the eldest child of William and Valeria Achenbach, was born at Mount Etna, Pennsylvania, on April 11, 1875. After graduating from South Lancaster Academy in Massachusetts in 1894, he took a nursing training course at Battle Creek Sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. There, Clinton met Minnie Branson, who was also a nurse trainee in the sanitarium. They married on February 6, 1903.
A call to medical evangelism in the Florida Conference started a united career for the Achenbachs that developed in the homeland and overseas mission fields. In 1904, Clinton and Minnie, joined by Clinton's younger sister Maggie, pioneered an enterprise that combined hydrotherapy treatment rooms with a vegetarian cafe. This endeavor gave impetus to the establishment of Florida Sanitarium in 1908, later known as Florida Hospital, and today as Advent Health Orlando.
In 1907, Clinton began 2 years as missionary field agent in the Florida Conference, a role that placed him in charge of a team of literary evangelists. He was ordained to gospel ministry by General Conference President Arthur G. Daniels in October 1910. 2 years later, he was elected president of the South Carolina Conference, a position he held for 2 years. To better equip himself for ministry, he studied at Washington Missionary College in Tacoma Park, Maryland, during the 1914-1915 academic year.
Clinton and Minnie received an appointment to join Ferdinand and Anna Stahl at the Lake Titicaca Indian Mission in the high mountains of Peru in 1915. There was a certain romantic aura about this mission station, for it was the home of the ancient Inca culture, remote and picturesque. The lake itself was the highest navigable body of water in the world. The altitude of 12,500 feet made it a challenging environment in which to work.
Clinton and Minnie departed from New Orleans on July 10, 1915, negotiating the relatively new Panama Canal and sailing down to the coast of Callao and Molendo. The landing was so steep that the chair had to be lowered and each passenger hoisted by a derrick onto the land. Clinton and Minnie journeyed partway into the mountains to acclimatize at Arequipa and remained there for several months to learn some Spanish before ascending further to Lake Titicaca.
The mission station was located near Puno on the northwestern shore, amid hundreds of grass-thatched homes. It had been established a decade earlier and enjoyed a good reputation in the area. Soon after arrival, Clinton reported that Sabbath school attendance was approximately 700. The clinic on site treated up to 20 patients each day. Patients included Spanish nationals, priests, and Inca Indians who were known to travel long distances for medical treatment at the clinic.
Clinton and Ferdinand Stahl at times performed surgical procedures such as removing eye tumors or operating on a gangrenous foot. A small fee was asked for each treatment. On some occasions, Clinton traveled many miles away from his headquarters to treat extreme cases.
The good influence of the medical work generated requests from the locals for mission outposts to be established. The first was in 1918, when a school for 85 students was opened at Titilaca on the lakeshore south of Puno. That same year, Raquel, the only child of Clinton and Minnie, was born.
Poor health made it necessary for the Achenbachs to return to the United States in early 1920. While recuperating in the homeland, Clinton ministered in the Southeastern Union Conference for 6 months and was then appointed director of the Puerto Rican mission. During his 3-year term, the number of churches grew from 10 to 15, and the baptized membership increased from 486 to 629 individuals. He nurtured 5 church schools and established Colegio Adventista in the mountainous region of Abonito and 2 other church schools in Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic.
From Puerto Rico, Clinton transferred to be superintendent of the Venezuela mission. He continued in leadership roles in Spanish-speaking countries, next as superintendent of the Cuban mission, then as superintendent of the Santo Domingo mission. The latter region was particularly difficult for Seventh-day Adventists to make any progress. The earliest converts were imprisoned for their faith, but the Achenbach's church schools reduced prejudice. The government began to realize that the mission was beneficial and deserved a place in their society.
Clinton and Minnie returned to the United States for a brief time in 1928, then returned to Puerto Rico. After 6 more years of evangelistic and pastoral labor, poor health again compelled them to return home in 1934. Clinton suffered a stroke that ended his life on March 19, 1935, at age 59. He was laid to rest in the Washington National Cemetery in Maryland. Minnie passed away in 1961 and rests in the same cemetery.
We invite you to read more about Clinton and Minnie Achenbach and to read the more than 4,000 other articles in the Encyclopedia of Seventh-day Adventists at encyclopedia.adventist.org. That's encyclopedia.adventist.org.
Welcome to Adventist Research. In the New Testament, many people shared a meal with other believers. It was a practice in which Jesus himself often participated. But did you know that there are psychological benefits of sharing a meal with others? Research shows that after just a single food-sharing event, the levels of circulation of oxytocin are higher, which promotes social bonding and higher levels of cooperation. The 2017-18 Global Church Member Survey assessed church members' experiences as part of the church body. One aspect surveyed was how often, in the last 12 months, church members had shared a meal with other people than their family members. It should be noted that this survey was conducted before the COVID-19 pandemic, so there were no socially limiting precautions or restrictions in place. A quarter, 24% of respondents, reported that in the last year they had shared a meal more than once a week or every week with a fellow church member. Another 12% said that they had done so almost every week. Other church members, 15%, reported that they had had a meal with other believers around once a month. Thus, overall, half of the respondents, 52%, had fellowship over a meal once a month or more often. These are good findings. Nevertheless, many members, 48%, almost another half, said that they had shared a meal infrequently or not at all. 19% had done so once a quarter, and another 19% had eaten with other church members only once or twice in the last year. Sadly, 1 in 10 respondents admitted that in the last year they had never shared a meal with another fellow church member or family member. This data was cross-tabulated by division. The blue color shows how many members had eaten together with other members every week or more often during the past 12 months. As you see, 3 divisions are ahead of others. In the Southern Asia division, slightly more than half of its members had shared their meals every week or more often. In the Southern Asia Pacific division, about 2 in 5 reported doing so, and in the East Central Africa division, about 1/3 had this custom. The number of those who shared fellowship over a meal once a month or more often, blue, light green, and dark green colors combined, rose up to 75% in the Southern Asia division and 66% in the Southern Asia Pacific division. These trends likely reflect the culture within these divisions that promote living within the community. Interestingly, although only 11% of the members from the North American division reported eating together weekly or more often, 62% of them said they had eaten together at least once a month, and 60% of membership from the East Central Africa division said so too. 3 divisions had over half members meeting and eating together once a month or more often. They are the Northern Asia Pacific, Trans-European, and South Pacific divisions. The lowest results for weekly and once a month or more often were from the Inter-European division. Members in this division, as well as members in the Trans-European, Inter-American, and South American divisions, were most likely to have a meal with others quarterly. The data shows that Adventists in the Eurasia and South Pacific divisions were most likely to have only shared a meal with one member once or twice during the past year. Respondents from the Southern Africa Indian Ocean division had the highest percentage, 13%, to have never shared a meal with another church member, followed by the South American division, 12%. Again, some of these trends may be attributed to cultural differences within divisions. However, even if they are, how can members be encouraged to step outside their comfort zone or the comfort zone of their culture to engage in sharing a meal with another member? If church members rarely have meals with one another, it can mean that they do not have close friends in the church. Friends provide support in good and bad times. They are a very significant factor in member retention. According to research by the Barna Group, hospitality is one of the characteristics of spiritually vibrant homes. Has it been a while since you shared a meal with another member and/or that family? What can you do to engage with them in this way? How can you encourage other members of your church to do so? Inviting people to your house for a meal or meeting with them more than during a potluck may also encourage others to open up their homes and their hearts to other believers.
Welcome to a new segment from the ASTR data collection and publication team. For this episode, we will briefly touch on the use of the Adventist Yearbook website. There are 2 basic ways of accessing the yearbook website. One is by going to www.adventistarchives.org and clicking on the Yearbook tab, and also by going directly to www.adventistyearbook.org. Some of the information that can be found in the yearbook website is the current status of all organizational units that comprise the Seventh-day Adventist Church worldwide, current maps for each division with and without statistical information, and the previous yearbooks, starting with the one from 1883 all the way through 2022. When using the search option, it displays the most recent data in yearbook. Currently, the results show data available in the printed 2023 yearbook or updated information received from the divisions after the book was published. To find the division maps, click on the About option where there is a link to the repository of maps. Every book of the yearbook is available for consultation online at AdventistYearbook.org and then following the link to previous yearbooks. The initial page will display the 2000 through 2022 yearbooks. To access all previous books, click on the View Older PDFs button. If you desire to own your personal copy of the most recent yearbook on paperback or PDF format, the book can be purchased in both formats at www.pacificpress.com/SDA yearbook. To explore and find more information on the Adventist Yearbook, visit www.adventistyearbook.org. That's adventistyearbook.org.
Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of ASTR. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe on YouTube and tell your friends about it. And consider following us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just go to the respective app and search for Adventist Archives. Join us again next time as we share more information and inspiration from Adventist history and today.